If you work in fundraising or communications, chances are you've probably been part of a conversation or two about how they should be able to work better together. It's the ideal scenario that fundraising and marketing should be able to work together in an integrated way to support their shared goal. This is definitely the ideal, but so often that's not happening within organizations. In today's tutorial, I'm going to give you some tactics and tips for better integrating your fundraising and marketing work, whether you're a team of one or you have totally separate marketing and fundraising departments. Hey there, my name is Vanessa Lockshin, and I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit. Welcome back to my channel for this tutorial. Before we dive into today's tips, you probably can guess that I'm a fan of storytelling as part of all marketing and fundraising work. And I want to give you some tips specifically to help you with storytelling across fundraising and marketing in the Storytelling Success Checklist. You can grab the link just below this video in the description box. So one of the things that I love about my consulting work with clients is that I often work at this really interesting intersection of fundraising and communications and figuring out how the two can work together to support shared goals, because they definitely have some. And there's a lot of overlap as well. But one of the things that people often worry about is fundraising just sort of overrunning the communications department and it just becoming all about fundraising communications for donors and not necessarily all the other communications that your organization may need to send. I totally get this. And one of the things that I think is totally possible to do is to find some common ground and to find a place where fundraising and communications can support one another and can really work together well. So today I want to give you some practical tips and tactics that you can try at your organization to increase the integration and success that you have with marketing and communications. And I want to say these are hopefully going to be useful tips even if you're a team of one and doing all the things, or if you're separate marketing and communications teams. Let's dive in. My first tip for you is to get the right structure and culture in place. I think this is such an important part of the puzzle because really, whether or not we want to admit it, so often the culture in management and work style starts from the top in the leadership of our organization. And it's really important to have your executive director and maybe other senior leadership bought into the idea that fundraising and marketing need to work together. By setting a collaborative tone, your leadership can really help steer the organization and staff in the right direction towards collaboration and hopefully some really good shared initiatives on fundraising and marketing work. One of the things I would also say too is if you plan to have two separate teams for marketing and communications, or maybe you already have two separate teams for these things, it's really helpful to get clear about who is responsible for what the areas of overlap are, and how you plan to navigate them together. Just having these general discussions about how you plan to work together can be really, really helpful in situations where teams are collaborating across topics and across areas of work. My second tip for you is to commit to shared priorities. I think this is a really important thing, especially if you are working in two separate teams. I mentioned in the first tip kind of getting clear on the areas of overlap. But within those areas of overlap that you might have, it's really valuable to get clear on what are our shared priorities for this area of overlap. And this is really to avoid two people trying to steer the car in different directions, because we all know that's not going to end well. So being able to get clear about those priorities and having a vision for where you're going together in those areas is really, really helpful. My third tip for you is to develop systems and tools for a successful ongoing collaboration and partnership. And to me, this tip is really about the ongoing mechanics of making your partnership with marketing and fundraising a success. Let's face it, we need tools to make it happen. Sometimes meetings are just not going to cut it, and you need other ways to collaborate with each other outside of meetings. And so it's really valuable to think about what tools will make it easier for that to happen. Can you agree to some shared tools, whether it's, in your Google Drive, your shared drive folder, or even project management tools that can make it easier. I'm personally a big fan of Trello for communications and a way to really develop some collaborative tool sets for that. But there's many other ones that you can use as well, depending on what your team's preferences are and what might be most helpful. Now, I want to get into some other tactical tips on fundraising and marketing integration. And specifically, these are questions I ask when trying to figure out what are the points of integration and how can we better integrate these two things. I'll say that typically my frame on this is that marketing is supporting fundraising more so than the other way around, but it could be the opposite for your organization. So you may want to think about what that dynamic looks like. All right, so when I work on a fundraising campaign or even a broader fundraising strategy or plan, here are some of the questions that I think about for organizations. Number one, is everyone clear about the current and prospective donor personas? This is so important. As you all know, marketing and fundraising are really about being able to reach a target audience effectively, and we need to have clarity around who it is we're trying to reach out to. So, having shared personas that we're working with and working towards capturing and bringing into our ladders of engagement is really, really important. My second question is, what messages, narratives, and stories do we need to make sure we consistently communicate across fundraising and marketing channels at various times? I'll say you're not going to always be coordinating between marketing and fundraising, but sometimes there are moments in campaigns or in your work where you really do need to have really strong, consistent messaging across your channels to support one of these things. Year-end fundraising is a good example of that. And so it's really valuable to think about what are the messages and narratives and stories, and what are those also specific times of the year when you may need more marketing support for fundraising or vice versa. And the final question I ask is, how can marketing help amplify a fundraising campaign, or maybe just in general our fundraising strategy? Marketing is a really great tool and a great way for us to reach new audiences, reach prospective donors, but we have to be strategic about that. And so in building out a fundraising strategy or a campaign plan, it's really valuable to think about how can we integrate these two tools and how can we make sure teams collaborate to help us reach some of these common goals. So those are my tips and tactics for you on integrating marketing and fundraising. I hope they're helpful for you and your organization. I know this is something a lot of us struggle with. And I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. Let me know how fundraising and marketing integration is going at your organization and which of these tips you plan to try out at your nonprofit. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribe to my channel for more weekly fundraising and communications tips.